This is Rebel Therapist, a podcast for entrepreneurs who are trained as therapists and who want to level up their businesses, make a bigger impact, feel fulfilled, and be very well paid. I'm your host, Annie Schusler. Hi there. The question I'm going to answer this week is, why is my email list growing so slowly? And more importantly, I'm also going to talk about how to speed up that growth. But before I jump into that, I want to tell you about a deadline coming up for Create Your Program. So Create Your Program is enrolling to start in April 2022, and there is an early bird deadline coming up. So Create Your Program is the place where I help people create their businesses beyond private practice. And we go through a step-by-step process together. You do some brave and meaningful work during our time together to create your signature program and step into the next chapter of your business. And in this next chapter, what's really important is that you have less shoulds, more freedom, more creativity, and more money. That money is really important to me and to you, I know. And we do so much stuff in Create Your Program, from niching to creating your pilot program, otherwise maybe known as your beta program, or reiterating that program if you've already got one. We create your marketing plan so that you can grow your business and you have a chance to ask questions of a guest attorney. And you also get access to past calls with a guest attorney, talking to people just like you. We've got a guest expert who comes in and talks about tech and systems in a way that will probably blow your mind to help you choose what tech and systems you actually need and don't need for your expanding business. There's a ton of support from me, and there is an early bird bonus. And the deadline for that bonus is coming up on March 9th, 2022. And after March 9th, the bonus goes away. So here's what it is. If you register by March 9th, you get an early bird small group strategy session with me. So this is a unique chance to get my brain on your business. And people often walk away from these sessions feeling more clarity about their next steps, including, these are some things I really need to commit to make this happen. These are some things I really need to let go of in order to make space for my business beyond private practice. So make sure you register, learn more about it, and register by March 9th. And you can find that information at rebeltherapist.me/create. All right, let's get into the question. So the question again is, why is my email list growing so slowly? And I got this from one of my wonderful participants. I got to back up before I answer this. I need to talk about some important kind of foundational assumptions about email marketing before I get into why that might be happening and how to speed it up. So email marketing really matters. My first question in return to this one would be, well, why do you want your email list to grow? Except I know why, because email marketing really matters. Your money is in your list is something you've probably heard every online marketing person say, including the really smart and ethical ones, because it's true. Now, I kind of like to think of it more like your future participants are in your list. Like, those are actually people. They're not just money. But yeah, your money, your people, your future participants are in your list. Email marketing is really likely to be a core tool in helping you grow your business beyond private practice. Now, for those of you who have a private practice, like a therapy practice that's more of a traditional one-on-one local thing, you don't need an email list. You might want one, but you don't need one. And I know that because I just know hundreds of therapists. People have overflowing practices and no email lists. So that you don't need. But if you are growing a business beyond private practice, you very likely will have email marketing as a core tool in growing that business. So I like to think of it like if you were to be in your kitchen looking around at what are the tools that are really important here, this is like your cast iron pan. For me, it would be a tool that I use all the time and that's very reliable, very core to what I'm doing. Other tools may be more exciting. They may be they may be newer, but email marketing has a really good conversion rate and it's going to give you a great return on your time investment if you use it well. Whereas some of those more exciting, newer tools, it's going to be a lot more hit or miss. And they may be a great additional tool to have in your kitchen, but they're not the cast iron pan. People buy your program through email way more than they do over social media. And so you want to have a healthy email list and you want to be growing your email list. And I want to say that the size of your email list, your number of subscribers is not the whole story. It's much more about the quality of that list. List size on its own can really become a vanity metric where you want that size of list to be as big as possible. But what's more important than that is to think about and to know what percentage of folks are opening your emails. And how many people are there because they're really interested in your topic? And, you got to be honest with yourself about this one. How many of the folks on your email list are your friends and family who you put on your email list? Ultimately, what those things will help you know is how many people on your list are likely to step up and purchase when you're ready to sell something. So to kind of make this into a concrete example, let's say there are 2 people and each of them have an email list with just 100 subscribers on it. That's a small list. A list of 100 people can be enough to run a small group program if you have folks on that list who are anticipating what you're going to sell. And I grabbed that number 100 subscribers because that would really be the minimum. When I had Janelle Allen on the podcast, she mentioned that number as kind of the minimum. And I know personally, I sold a group program when my list was at 100 people. So going with that assumption, we've got 2 people, each with a list of 100 people. Let's say person A has a list of subscribers who got on that list because they were signing up for a wait list for person A's program. So they went to a page and they saw this program's coming. I can sign up for the wait list and get notified. Or maybe they signed up because they wanted to get person A's weekly emails. They wanted to hear from that person every week about this topic. Or maybe they signed up for a free offer that's very closely related to person A's paid offer. Okay, so this is a high quality list. And person A has been emailing them every week with content that's really relevant to the program that they're going to sell. And A is selling a small group program. They're not trying to sell a program of 100 or even maybe 50 people or even 20 people. They're selling a very small group program. With a list of 100 people, even selling to 5 would be a really high conversion rate. Okay, so that's person A. They're making it work with a list of 100. Person B, on the other hand, has a list of 100 people. They created a checklist as their freebie, and it was something that would appeal to almost everyone. Like, let's say their checklist was how to save 5 hours a week in 5 minutes or less. And 100 people signed up right away. Like, they shared it on social media, they shared it in some Facebook groups, and 100 people signed up right away. This freebie is so enticing and easy to grab that it kind of doesn't filter out very many people. And it might be that very few or none of those 100 people are really here for what person B is selling. Okay, so we've got 2 different kinds of lists. And person B, let's say they have not been emailing those people and their checklist is not very closely related to the offer they're ultimately going to sell. So person A has this list of 100 people that's very high quality. Person B has this list of 100 people that isn't going to really get them very far. So even for A, this amazing list of 100 people is not going to work over and over again. They're going to need to grow that list in order to sustain their business. One thing you're going to have to do to have a high quality list is to prune it or to clean it, as people say. So that means having a way that you invite people off the list who are not opening your emails, who are not engaging with your content. And that's a pretty simple thing to do. If you give in to the vanity metric of list size, you're not going to want to clean your list. You're not going to want to invite off the people who are not reading your emails. And when you do prune your list, your open rates go up and your engagement rates go up because you've got people there who want to be there. And that means that your emails, as they come into people's inboxes, they are less likely to be tagged as spam. So the higher your open rates are, the more you're going to actually get seen by the people who want to be opening your emails. So you got to be cleaning that list. And I've gotten so much better about that in the last year. And it's really helpful. You're also, if you can think about your list in terms of quality, you won't be so worried about unsubscribes. Unsubscribes are no big deal. They should probably be happening every time you send out an email, and it's no big deal. When someone's not needing your emails anymore, you should just celebrate that they are going on their way. I sent out, and this always delights me, and I can't remember if I've already told you this, but I sent out an email once with the subject heading mentioning that I play the ukulele. Okay, I got more unsubscribes from that one than pretty much any other email. And that just delights me so much because it makes me laugh to think about somebody seeing that in their inbox and thinking, what is she talking about? That's enough. No more of this. I gotta unsubscribe. Yeah, so please don't worry about unsubscribes. A little more background here before we really get into answering this person's question. Let's talk about choosing your free offer, otherwise known as your lead magnet or your freebie or your opt-in. You want to have a freebie that is always available behind the scenes. And I'll give you a few examples. One could be just sign up for my email list. That can be the opt-in. Another can be a quiz or something else that's quick and enticing, with the warning that I just gave you about if it's too enticing and not specific enough, it may not help you actually ever sell anything. A third example would be a mini e-course, and that is just usually a series of emails that's going to come in perhaps every day for a week or something like that. So in my own experience, when I had a quiz up, it got a lot of takers. And the weekly email, I've always had an option where someone could just sign up for my weekly emails, no free offer necessary. And that gets less takers, but tends to lead to more clients. So the weekly email itself, where someone just signed up for my weekly email, that tended to lead to more clients than the quiz did. But both helped to grow my email list. And then the mini course, this is something that I have available now. And what I'm noticing is that it seems to be doing well for both things, that it has more takers, more people signing up for it, and that a good number of the people who go through that mini course do end up purchasing Create Your Program. So these are things to just pay attention to as you're choosing your free offer and then noticing what's working. What do you want to try next? I always encourage people during Create Your Program who don't already have a freebie to consider just starting with your weekly emails as your freebie. So in other words, someone goes to your site, there's a clear way for them to sign up to hear from you weekly about a very specific topic, and that is the free offer. They give you their email address, they know they're going to start getting your weekly emails. And then I encourage people to, once they have that up and running, to create a more enticing freebie when they can, when they have the time, when they're more clear on what that should be. I do encourage you to eventually create another freebie or even a set of freebies over time, but that's really icing on the cake. It's less important than having a way for people to get on your email list and then a really healthy, sustainable relationship with writing those weekly emails. So let's talk about that. You got to have a healthy relationship with your email list. And you can think of this as your nurture system. So have a ritual that really works for you. So in Rebel Therapist Mastermind, which is a follow-up program that some people who go through Create Your Program then go through. So in Rebel Therapist Mastermind, we have a 90-minute co-working sprint every week. And I always encourage people to use that time to write their weekly email. And that's often how I use it. So if you set it aside and it becomes just sort of this time that you will not compromise on, but where you have your butt in your seat and you commit to this practice, that can be really helpful. And I know for some of you, that's probably making you squirm because the idea of a decision that is how you're spending that time every week doesn't work for you. For some of us, that kind of ritual is actually quite comforting. So know yourself, know what works for you, but you've got to create a ritual that does work for you and that sets aside that time and that energy for a thoughtful email every week. Or if it's a really remarkable email, 90 minutes might be enough time to start that email and then come back to it another time. I want to encourage you to have a really healthy relationship with your email list while it's tiny. So let's say your email list is really tiny right now. It's under 100 people, or it's tiny for you. And you're thinking, well, once I grow it, then I'm going to be like writing these kick-ass emails. I would really encourage you to start writing those kick-ass emails now while your list is tiny so that you can develop a really great relationship with your email list as it grows. So we're getting close to the question that was asked in the beginning here. Let's say you've got a healthy relationship with your email list. You are writing really high quality emails every week. You have a freebie that's running in the background and you feel really good about offering that freebie to people. And it's very relevant to people who then may be a great fit for your paid offer. You've got all of that laid as a foundation, but it's going really slowly. So that question was, why is my email list growing so slowly? And how do I speed up that process? The key then is to get in front of other people's audiences in a way that encourages them to sign up for your opt-in, or that even automatically adds them to your list. But that second one, only if you can do that in a really ethical way. So some ways to do that. You can get creative. There is not one way to do this, but some ways to do this could be a summit. Some summits are really lousy and low quality, and they're just ways for people to add numbers to their email lists, but they're not really creating a lot of value. And some summits are amazing. So I'm talking about those high quality summits. Any kind of online speaking engagement. It really could be any kind of speaking engagement, but it's January 2022 as I'm recording this. So let's just talk about online for the moment so that we don't freak ourselves out. So speaking engagements where you have your call to action ready, your opt-in ready, and you can offer it to people while they're enjoying you and getting a lot of value from you. Guest teaching in another person's program is a wonderful opportunity. Being interviewed for a podcast, and then when you're asked, where can people find you? You present your opt-in, and it's a very clear and enticing opt-in. That's like my favorite of these things that I'm listing out here. But what matters more is what's your favorite. Another one is collaborating on some kind of presentation or webinar with a partner. So grabbing another person, inviting another person who you respect and creating something together. And then everybody who signs up for that collaborative presentation is going to be on both of your email lists, and you make that very clear. Another one is swapping webinars or swapping presentations, where everyone who signs up for your guest's webinar, like you introduce this guest to your list, everyone who signs up for their webinar gets onto that person's list. And then they do the same thing for you. They email their list, invite everyone to your webinar, and everyone who signs up gets onto your list. And it's really about doing at least one of those things over and over and over again. It's not usually about getting discovered by someone with a huge audience who can just, kind of blow you up and make you famous. It's really about doing these things over and over again. And you can team up with someone who also has an audience of a similar size of yours. They don't have to have a huge audience. If you're consistent with this, then you will grow your list more quickly. And then I'm going to put these things much lower on the list is using social media to grow your list. You should absolutely do that unless you don't use social media. You should absolutely do that. It's just that is going to tend to go much more slowly than these other things, because when you are getting in front of someone else's audience, and I don't mean Zuckerberg's audience, but another creator's audience, that is going to grow your list much more quickly than you just putting out your stuff on social media. Now, you can get really creative with this. You can ask yourself, whenever there's an opportunity, does this opportunity get me in front of someone else's audience? If it does, then it might fit into your growth strategy. So you've already got your nurture strategy, which is writing that weekly email, having a really clear way where people can opt into your offer and get that weekly email. And then you've got your growth strategy, and anything that gets you in front of someone else's audience with a way to get on your list can be part of your growth strategy. So just make sure you've got a consistent strategy to make that happen. So as an introvert, these growth strategy things are the ones I have to remind myself to do. Like, I am much more natural at creating the stuff behind the scenes and sharing it in a way that is introverted. And these are the things that I really need to push myself to do, these growth strategy things. And in the beginning, before I understood this, I just sent out announcements about webinars that I was doing to my email list and to my tiny social media following. And then I would have the same 10 people coming to things over and over again. That is too slow. That's why you need to have a growth strategy as well. And that is definitely what made a big difference in my business, was moving to having some consistent opportunities to get in front of other people's audiences. A tiny little side note here, you can pay for ads. That is another way to speed up list growing, but do not do that until you know that your system already works organically. Paying for ads before you know that the whole system works, like people get onto your list, they opt in, they get your emails, they buy your program, and that whole thing is working, then you could consider paying for ads to speed up that process. But if you do it as kind of a shortcut when you don't know if your system works yet, then that's where you're going to waste a ton of money, or you're likely to waste a ton of money. It's kind of like, can we do another cooking analogy? It's kind of like you see a recipe that you think is going to be good, but you haven't tried it yet, and you 5X it for a dinner party. But you've never tried the recipe in the first place. Don't do that. Like, test it out. I am personally going to be probably in 2022 finally stepping back into some paid ads in a limited way, which I haven't done in several years. And so I've grown my business without ads, and you may or may not choose to use ads. All right, let's look at a few examples before we say goodbye. We're going to look at a few examples of what's working for people in growing their email lists and in just having a healthy relationship with their email lists. So I'll tell you about my current strategy, and then I'm going to tell you about a few other people. I know most about my current strategy, so you'll hear more details about mine. I have a really healthy relationship with my email ritual, where I email once a week, always on Tuesday morning, Pacific time, and I write my email for the next week, usually on the prior Tuesday. And when I say usually, like, I don't hold it lightly. It's just that, it's not always that I'm writing it on the Tuesday. And then when I'm in launch mode, when I have a offer that is about to close, like the card is about to close on it, then I'm emailing just about every day in that final week. My growth strategy is mostly guesting on podcasts with a freebie that's really easy to find and really relevant to my future clients. And then I also host my own events, free events, about 4 times or more every year. And then I have running in the background an option to also, you could either grab my free offer or you can just sign up for my email list. And it's interesting, no matter what my free offer is or whether I have a free event going, some people choose to sign up for my email list directly instead, which is like saying, I don't want your free offer. I just want to hear from you every week. Whatever you're writing in that email, that's what I want. So, and a lot of times people even sign up for both at the same time, like that maybe they're not 100% sure they're going to get the email unless they sign up for that. One more note about me, I also consider my podcast to be a really similar kind of cast iron pan tool in that, or maybe it's a saucepan and the email marketing strategy is a cast iron pan. It's really foundational to my business. And in the podcast, in you, I have an audience that grows slowly and where people often learn everything they need to in order to decide whether to work with me. So my podcast works a lot like my email list that way. And many of you are not on my email list, which is totally fine. Although you're welcome to join me there, of course. I would love that. Okay, let's talk about Jeff Gunther. He was just on the podcast. He was the last guest. And something that stands out for me about him, we really dove into how he uses his emails. He uses the emails themselves to get more subscribers to the emails. So he writes a ridiculously dishy, attractive, vulnerable, and opinionated email pretty much every week. And then, and it really grabs people's attention with the headline. You can listen to that episode for how he figures out how to do that. And then he emails that to his list with a link to his blog, or to the Therapy Den blog, I should say, where that same piece of writing is a blog post. And there, because the piece is enticing and controversial and all of those good things, sometimes people share that blog post on social media. And then that brings more people to the blog, and then that brings in more subscribers. So that whole little mini strategy really relies on the emails being interesting and controversial and worth talking about. So that's one thing that stands out to me from Jeff's strategy. And then I'm also going to talk about Podge Thomas, who was the guest before Jeff. And what stands out to me from Podge's email strategy is that she does what's interesting and valuable to her as well. And I think that's so important, that you need to have a long-term relationship with your email list, and that is going to help you grow your audience. So you also need to feel interested in what you're writing. And so she talked about this in the episode, that she's always sharing something thoughtful and remarkable and candid in her emails with her list. And that is also growing her as a thought leader. So she's writing about what's most interesting to her about, in her case, management and team building. And then that is drawing people into a conversation so that they can see, is she the thought leader who they want to be learning from? And one thing that stands out to me from Podge is this idea of, what do you wish you could say? Like, what if you were just getting to be honest with the people who are reading your work? What do you wish you could say? And then consider, maybe you should say that. If it's thoughtful, if it is meaningful, if it's ethical, maybe you should be sharing that. And one more person who stands out to me here is Katie Nasherson. And this is definitely along the lines of doing something that brings you joy and gives you a healthy relationship and a joyful relationship with your marketing. So she started very recently a weekly free book group as part of her audience growth strategy. So people sign up for the free book group, and then they're on her email list as well. And these books are relevant to her niche, which is rebuilding your life after a catastrophe. And they're also the books that she wants to be reading. So she's kind of feeding two birds with one scone here. So Katie's book group is just such a great example of experimenting with something and looking at how could this be a joyful and interesting practice for you. Now I'm going to head into a couple of listener comments. So I invited people to share their own reflections on 2021 and plans for 2022 in my episode, My Biggest Year Yet, which came out at the end of 2021. Here's Maureen Cotton talking about her reflections on 2021 and where she's headed. She was in Rebel Therapist Mastermind last year, so I've gotten to be on the inside track watching this develop. And I feel like what she's talking about right here is what it's like to be at a new stage of your thought leadership.
Hey, Annie. It's Maureen. There's so much I could say about specific wins, about having more clients than I even intended to have, getting my fees closer to where they need to be, all of that. But I think my biggest evolution in the year was just really coming to see myself differently as a spiritual guide, both personally and professionally. And that has been absolutely huge. And when I look at the last year and where the next year is going and where it could go, I think that's the piece that I just want to see how much it's come together, because the clarity around that, of course, has shaped how I'm looking at my business. At first, I was just officiating weddings. Now I'm going to be a coach for engaged couples, even when I'm not officiating, and I've had all this struggle around finding the right language because couples aren't necessarily looking for a coach when they're engaged, but I know the kinds of things that I can help with, how I can help people get clearer, have more intention, have tons more joy in their planning and the beginning of their marriage. And so when I think about what is that role, what is the role I'm playing, that's been my biggest question. I'm still stewing in it. But in the last couple weeks of the year, I've had a few interesting pieces of feedback that just show me how far I've come and that my message is starting to get out there, even though I haven't crafted my message well yet. I don't have my new website, my new offering up, but people keep telling me that I'm making them cry. Someone messaged me on Instagram and they just said I was reading some of your posts and it made me realize like what my wedding ceremony could be, and I'm just sitting here in tears. Or someone else sent me an inquiry and they're from another country and they're a queer couple and they can't legally get married there, and in my response to them I just started with kind of acknowledging like there's this cultural expectation that your engagement's like the happiest time of your life, and I'm seeing that that may not be the case for you, that it's more complex. And they also wrote back to saying like that they were very emotional processing that response. I introduced myself to a wedding planner that I had met on a forum, and they also said some of the things I mentioned about meaning making in weddings made them cry. So it's interesting that my message is really resonating with people. And at the same time, those three people I mentioned, a fellow vendor and two prospects, at this time, none of them have become a paying client. So what I'm moving into is the skillfulness, okay, there's this power to my message, and really feeling that and owning that, and just, I need to pause and see, okay, my message is getting out there and it's helping people. That even finding a post touches them so much they cry. Even my reply to their inquiry touches them so much they make them cry. So if I can now build the systems, craft the message so that I can reach my hand farther out to the people who are really ready for more help, it's going to be powerful and it's going to be profitable. So that's the next piece. And I'm feeling really excited, taking a moment in this limbo time of the year to see what has been accomplished and then looking ahead to see what's possible and just to recharge for that journey. So it's very exciting.
And here is a wonderful listener named Grace, and she's commenting on what I said about turning 50.
Hi, Annie. I'm a long-time podcast listener, and I just finished the episode where you were reflecting on 2021. I really enjoyed it. And I wanted to offer some encouragement about the ageism that is so easy to internalize. I am 47, so I'm right behind you, and I know what you're talking about. It seems like everywhere in these online entrepreneurial spaces, it's all younger folks. And I'm revealing some of my own bias here, but I sometimes have a hard time with that. And I wanted to say, I appreciate people like you that are in this space, because even though there's great value in the energy and the technological understanding and some of the ideas that younger folks bring to the conversation, there's also a whole lot of value in the wisdom of life experience that comes in the over 40 crowd, as well as I think we're capable of having more nuanced conversations about work-life balance and really choosing priorities and some of those kind of things. So yeah, I just want to say I appreciate that you are showing up as your 50-year-old self in this online workspace. I'm here with you.
Thank you so much, Grace and Maureen. If you have a comment about this episode or any episode, please email us at info@coachingwithannie.com. And even better, leave us a voice memo like Grace and Maureen did so that I can share your voice on the podcast. I want to thank Jessica Riscala for producing this podcast and Cosmo Palms for editing it. And I so appreciate you listening. And if you're finding this episode supportive, please share it with another therapist. That is by far the best way for us to grow our audience here of this beloved community of listeners. And if you haven't already, if you could, wherever you're listening, give us a review or a rating, we would so appreciate it, especially if you like this podcast. Okay, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you next time.